This is going to be another of my 1950 census talks. It's a specialty talk entitled, Where is Portland, Oregon's 1950 Official U.S. Census Map? So for those of you who have targets in Portland on the 1950 census, which is going to become public in April of 2022, and are looking for the map, I'm going to explain how to get it. There are a number of other maps that are in the same boat. I don't have as much information about their status. I do have information about where we created maps for them, and that includes Jersey City, New Jersey, Worcester, Massachusetts, New Haven, Connecticut, and Charleston, South Carolina. So why would you need a Portland, Oregon 1950 map? Curiosity? See neighborhoods 70 years ago? You were assigned a homework assignment? Might make a nice wall decoration. But no, that's not what we're going to do it. What we're going to use it for would be to find a Portland residence, an address, in 1950 to get its enumeration district number. It also would help create a street index to the enumeration districts in 1950 Portland. And then the third thing would be that you could do both of these and check them against each other. So it would be a check on the Portland map, an ED number that you got from an ED street index search. And I'm going to show you both the map routine and the street index routine. The National Archives has put over 9,600 1950 ED maps, those are enumeration district maps, on their catalog. But I found that over 70 of our targeted areas, because we had over 2,000 areas we wanted to do street indexes for, had poor or non-existent such maps on their catalog. The largest municipality that I couldn't find a map for was Portland. So I sent an email query to the National Archives cartography section in February of 2017. And this is what I wrote. I said to them, Portland, Oregon is in Multnomah County. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. It had a 1950 population of over 370,000 people. It's a major city. If I go to, and I showed them the address, the National Archives catalog, and I enter in that 1950 census maps, Portland OR, there is no sign of the city maps on the initial result page. So what you do is, if I open the Images tab, I do see two digitized map entries for the urbanized area of Portland. Well, there it is, right? I don't know. Which is not the city of Portland. Portland in 1950 had its own prefix, which was 37-. ED numbers are two-part numbers. So the question is, I'm addressing this to the National Archives, is the city of Portland, Oregon, 1950 census map missing from the map collection? If it is missing, then I'll spend the time to create such a map on our end to aid in our project. And then a week later, I got a response from them that Portland has been pulled for conservation, meaning the map was in pretty bad shape. At the moment, there is no available time frame for it to return back to us, and that's the reason why it wasn't digitized and put on the National Archive catalog. And they also showed me a copy of what is in the place of where that map should be. And you can see it was pulled in May 12th of 2016. So I'm writing in 2017, and it still had not been returned. So it's unlikely that the National Archive is going to put in their catalog a map of Portland. in 1950. And by the way, I asked the National Archives about the other missing maps, but never got an accounting for them. Perhaps we were prophetic by giving Portland the four-letter code POOR, the first two letters of Portland and Oregon. It's a poor map. And so we made our own ED maps for Portland and over 20 missing urban areas of over 20,000 for over 100,000. I'll show you how we did that in a second. Here's my journey to provide users, you guys, of the Steve Morse one-step site, that's where the locational tools are, a useful 1950 Portland census map or ED search utility. So let's step back a second. Is there somewhere an exact copy of this enumeration district map, 1950 Portland? And actually, in the early stages of our 1950 project, in February of 2014, before I knew that the National Archives was going to put these maps on their catalog, I found online the next resource I'm going to show you, next slide. Got it by interlibrary loan, thanks Cal State Fullerton, scanned it, and used it for my eventual 1950 map, or at least to help produce that map. And I don't quite remember now the Google exactly how I stumbled on this, but here's where it is. It's at the University of Oregon Library. And if you do a library search on 1950 U.S. Census of population and housing, that second hit is a film, a microform, which shows maps of basically most of the enumeration districts in Oregon in 1950. Pretty neat, and includes Portland. And here is, I scanned the film. It says here, again, it says maps for Oregon. This set of maps depict the basic data from the 1950 census, and it's in the cartographic branch at the National Archives, Washington, D.C. So this photostatic copy, it's not a very good copy, photostatic, should represent what that map looked like. So when did they do this? They did this in 1970. In March of 1970, the Bureau of Governmental Research and Service at the University of Oregon got a grant. You can see on the top, you can slow this down to do this. This is 1970. However, as you can see, this is not a great map. It's not a color map. And in addition to that, the map is very dark on the top. And it really kind of puzzles me a little bit. Let's look at that a little more detail. You can see there are 4 maps, and they did parts of each of them. So there's a number of these graphics. If we look at this closely, it's kind of interesting. Who put the white numbers? Those are enumeration district numbers, although it's missing the prefix. If we look at 185 and look to the left of it, 189 appears to have both the white and the black numbers. My guess is actually that maybe the original map had these white lines put on them and not the University of Oregon group. Not quite clear, but it's obvious that it's not a good map. Not a good map. What I need here to illustrate the use of this map to support my story is an example that will show whether the resources I found will actually lead to a 1950 ED number for Portland 1950. So I randomly chose an odd-numbered address that will help us in our journey. So a block that has, let's say, 55, 29 maybe, 31, 33. I'm not going to tell you the specific residence. 62nd Avenue Southeast is on a block with Harold on the north side of the block, 63rd Avenue on the east side, Reed Way on the south side, and 62nd Avenue on the west side of this block. So this is a block strategy, and this is a choice from the southeast part of Portland. So here is a part of that 1970 photostatic situation. In this particular case, it's not too bad. It takes us a while to figure out the streets like Harold and Reedway, etc. And if you look closely, you'll see there's a number 53. If you look to the right, number 52 is something like Mountain Scott Park. So whenever we see these maps, you'll see that large square for the park. Well, it turns out actually the 53 is a partial number. All these large ED maps actually did not draw the prefix. So you need to look at a legend, and this is the legend on the scan from 1970. And you'll see it says that all ED numbers are preceded by 37. So that's actually 37-53. So we could actually use these maps to find the enumeration district for our location. I have put the 16 Portland images that I scanned from the microfilm at that address. Okay, there's an address there. But be warned, I found errors on the university microfilm where the map had wrong ED number overlays, those white lines and overlays, or boundaries. Although useful, those maps were often illegible, and assume there are many errors on these maps. And even though I have put it in a folder on the SteveMorse.org website, that's the one-step website, I did not include it in the the map index we have, because of the poor resolution and quality. But I am giving you an opportunity here to grab those maps. Now, if I didn't have that particular microfilm from the University of Oregon, could I have used the 1940 census maps for Portland? The National Archives catalog has them, and in addition, I had scanned the film images myself over a decade ago. And there is the listing at the National Archive catalog. You can see they have the 1940 maps. Again, the map does not show the prefix on those drawn numbers in the EDs. It does tell you that all EDs are preceded by 37 dash. So if we look a little closer at this, and a little closer, and I show you where our block is, these maps were difficult to read because they were in black and white. The actual original maps were in color. They had a number of different numbers on them. You see in the upper left, it says 4 part. The upper right is 5. Those are probably census tract numbers. And if you look at where the block is, you might think that the ED is 130. It actually is not. The ED is the 182 number. So the ED was difficult to figure out here. These numbers were probably put in different colors. They represent different things. One of them is an ED number. The other one could be some other number on this base map. Could we use this in 1950? No, because you see in 1950, the EDs weren't at 182. They were completely different, and even 37-54 has a little bit more than what the 1940 did. You cannot use the 1940 ED numbers in 1950. But we're not close yet to having online either a good 1950 ED map or a searchable text way of finding Portland 1950 EDs. So now I'm going to have to tell you about enumeration district resources. I found and scanned the 38 rolls of 1950 ED definitions. I found them online. I got them through Interlibrary Loan. I scanned them. Took 7 months from start to finish of the project. Hand scanned them. And then Steve Morse put the scans online in 2013 at stevemorse.org. That's the one-step website. And then 27 volunteers helped transcribe the over 250,000 ED definitions, including those for Portland, and those are searchable by name. So if I were to show you an example of the film itself that we got, that I scanned, there's 37-53. You can see there. This is what we have online at the One Step website. And I will blow this up a little bit more. There are 570 people in 37-53. And the various parts you're looking at are this. That track 5 is called a census tract number. That's important for us. Talk about that in more detail. And then what happens is that you see 4 lines. Harold is on the north boundary of the enumeration district. Remember, we're not talking about the block anymore. We're talking about the enumeration district, which is composed of more than one block in this case. And then the next line is the east boundary, the third line is the south boundary, and the fourth line is the west boundary. So we could potentially, knowing this, and I think I want to do one more thing. I think I want to define census tract number first and then use these boundaries. So census tracts are small, uniquely numbered, relatively permanent statistical subdivisions of a county. They're usually made up of multiple enumeration districts. So if we have the ED boundaries, we could, on a circa 1950 map, draw them on that map and create our own enumeration district map for Portland. The problem here is that a lot of these maps that I have, and I have a good map collection, are going to be copyright. And I wanted to find something that is non-copyrighted to put online to help people. And I found one that the Census Bureau has produced for Portland and a number of other cities. They produced over 200 pamphlets of cities of over 50,000 that have housing information. Every block in those cities is numbered. The number is shown on maps, and there is a table that shows you summary information about the residences and the housing information. Very useful. And I have a YouTube video on how to get those pamphlets. The 5 largest cities missing information, which are shown here, all have pamphlets. And so I was able to use these maps to put online for these 5. I'm going to show you first Jersey City and how I did it. So here's Jersey City. It looks a little bit differently, 2910, because it has the block numbers on the bottom. So remember, you have York on the north, Washington on the east, Sussex on the south, and Warren, Grand, and Van Vorst on the west. However, 2910, that's the enumeration district, is also defined as Tract 38, blocks 13, 14, and 15. 13, 14, and 15. We don't even need to know what it's bounded by. So we can look at the housing map. And this is part of one of the submaps. Here we are on Tract 38. See, there's no EDs here, but all the blocks are numbered. So in order to make this into an ED map, all I would have to do is take a program like GIMP. It's like Photoshop. It has a bucket. You can fill the bucket with color and then pour the bucket into a polygon, and that's what I did. And then what you would do is you would just write that's 10 and then prefix. And I'll show you what one of these maps looks like. So here we have one of the Jersey cities submaps, and that's what it looks like after I've gone through without, just doing the census tracts and the blocks, and just adding color. Now Portland is a little bit more difficult because it doesn't show the block numbers. And in this particular case, I know it's track 5, and now I'm going to have to use the northeast, south, and west boundaries to figure out where the EDs are. And I did use those 1970 photostatic scans also to help me do that. So here we have the block that we were interested in initially. Remember, these are 1950 maps, and after I got through with it, I created a map that looks like this. Remember that we need to add the prefix for Portland to it. So given that, let's do a search online for where these created block ED maps are for Portland, and also do a text search for the ED number for 55 odd number 62nd Avenue Southeast in 1950. The one-step web pages by Stephen P. Morse is where it's going to be located. Number of locational tools there for 1950 census. It's at stevemorse.org, not .com, who's a musician. You will want the unified tool on the U.S. Census section for census research. So here we are on the unified tool. On the top you see it's 1950, that's default. I have picked the state, Oregon. I don't worry about the county. I have picked Portland, and I'll show you how that's done in a second. As soon as I pick Portland, all of a sudden I see all the enumeration districts for Portland, but more important, I see a pop-up here that's a link to the one-step map utility. If I click on that, it transfers that information to our viewing 1950 enumeration district maps in one step. If I click on Portland on the right side, opens up, and you see that the links to the National Archive viewer or the server JPEGs, that's their catalog, has nothing because the maps are not there. Instead, we direct you to JPEGs that are actually on the one-step server. Okay, so that's where you get the maps. And remember, the actual maps that I scanned from the University of Oregon are not shown here. I've given you that address on a previous slide. So let me show you the quicker way of doing it, although I recommend that if there is a good map available, that you do this system and also compare it to the enumeration district map, just to eliminate human error, although both of them could be wrong, of course. So here we're going to do the full power of the unified tool. So I pick Oregon. You notice that all the states are there. You don't have to type that in. And then the next one I'm going to do is go to the city or town and open that up, and I will pick Portland. And once I pick Portland, I will see that pop up for the maps, all the EDs, but it also gives me an opportunity now to look at the street index. So, and there's also a house number there as well. The streets have all the streets in Portland. How do we get those streets? They're from the enumeration districts that we transcribe, not only the boundaries, but the internal streets as well. So I open that up, and I go down and I look at where my address is. It's on 62nd Avenue. That's listed there. I will click on that. Now, as soon as I click on 62nd Avenue Southeast, magically, it reduces the number of EDs. These are the enumeration districts that have 62nd Avenue Southeast either as a boundary street or as an internal streets. And the trick is going to be to keep adding street names from the block that your address is on until you get down, hopefully, to a single ED. It's not always possible, but in most cases, that should happen. What you could do is you could put the house number in that blank area and go to a Google map to see the streets on the same block. I've already done that for you. So let's pick Harold, and you notice that the box is smaller because now all the streets there come from just the EDs you see. If I select Harold, I'm now down to 4 EDs. And those 4 EDs supply the streets for the next choice. So let's see, we've done that and done that. Let's put in 63rd Avenue. Search for 63rd Avenue. We do that, we're down to 2 EDs. And that leaves Reedway. And the quick way of getting to any of these, by the way, would be to press the keyboard R. It would take you to the start of the R's, and then you scan down. And if we press R and then find Reedway, we now have entered 4 street names. There's only a 1 enumeration district in Portland, 37-53, that has all 4 street names. Pretty neat. Took us a lot of time to do that. 8 years from start to finish to do both the ED definitions and the street indexes. Now, if you want further information, I have a lot of 1950 videos on YouTube. I have this one on using enumeration district maps. I think you'll find that interesting and enjoyable, actually. And another YouTube on ED definition primer. So this has been another JDW Talks. I have YouTube talks on census resources, Ellis Island. About half the talks are on these genealogy topics. Lots of talks on the 1950 census. Some of them are training films for the census takers. And then I am a retired field biologist. I have talks on various natural history topics, mostly birds, birding optics, and some virtual birding field trips. So I hope that what we are doing, we meaning Steve Morse, myself, and our many volunteers for the census information, is going to make things a lot easier for you when the 1950 census rolls out in April of 2022. Good luck on your searches.